The chandeliers at the Mandarin Oriental in Miami glittered like 1,000 tiny stars casting golden light over a sea of sequined gowns and tailored suits. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition, thick with the clink of champagne flutes and the soft hum of jazz from a live band. I stood in the middle of it all, my heart pounding so hard I swore it'd bust right out of my chest. Me Jada Coleman, a girl who'd been sleeping on park benches in Memphis 6 months ago, now wearing a deep emerald gown that hugged my curves like it was made for me. But it wasn't the dress or the diamonds dangling from my ears that had every eye in the room on me. It was the man beside me, Nate Harper, Nate to me, the billionaire who'd just turned this fancy shindig upside down. Vanessa Blake. His ex stood a few feet away, her blonde hair swept up like she was auditioning for royalty. Her smile was all teeth sharp enough to cut glass, and her voice dripped with honeyed venom as she leaned in loud enough for the crowd to hear. "So, Jada, tell us, how does it feel to go from the streets to this?" Nate's always had a soft spot for charity cases. The room went quiet, like someone hit pause on the whole damn world. I felt the stares, the whispers, the weight of every judgment pinning me down. My throat tightened, but I wasn't about to let this woman who'd tossed Nate's heart aside like it was pocket change make me feel small. I straightened my shoulders, my chin high, and locked eyes with her. "You know, Vanessa, I don't need Nate's money to know what I'm worth, but you. I'm guessing you'll never figure that out, no matter how many zeros are in your bank account." A few gasps rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's face flushed pink under her perfect makeup, her lips parting like she was ready to fire back. But before she could, Nate stepped forward, his hand finding mine warm and steady. His gray eyes, usually so guarded, burned with something fierce, something that made my breath catch. He didn't look at Vanessa. He looked at me like I was the only person in the room. And when he spoke, his voice carried over the silence like a thunderclap. "Jada is everything I've ever dreamed of," he said, clear and unapologetic. "She's my home." The words hit me like a freight train stealing the air from my lungs. The crowd murmured, some shocked, some scandalized, but I didn't care. Vanessa's smile cracked her composure, slipping just enough to show the sting of defeat. Nate raised my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles, and the room seemed to spin. I was still that girl from Beale Street, but in that moment, I was also his, and he was mine. 6 months ago, I never could have imagined this. I was huddling under a tarp in Memphis, rain soaking through my sneakers with nothing but a backpack and a heart full of grief. How the hell did I go from that to standing here in a ballroom in Miami with a man who just laid his heart bare in front of the city's elite? It all started with a rainy night, a stranger's kindness, and 3 words that changed everything. Let me take you back to where it began, Memphis, Tennessee. My home, where the blues bleed into every corner of the city. Beale Street was my playground growing up. Neon lights, smoky bars, and the wail of guitars that felt like they were singing my soul. My daddy was a guitar man playing gigs until his heart gave out 2 years ago. I spent every dime I had on his hospital bills dancing in dive bars and teaching kids hip-hop at the community center to keep us afloat. But when he passed, the medical debt swallowed me whole. One missed rent payment turned into an eviction notice, and before I knew it, I was carrying my life in a beat-up backpack, sleeping wherever I could stay dry. That night, the rain came down like the sky was crying for me. I'd been kicked out of my usual spot in Overton Park by some other folks fighting for the same patch of ground. So I ended up under the awning of an old building on Union Avenue, a fancy boutique hotel that looked abandoned in the storm. My clothes were soaked, my teeth chattering, and I was trying to wrap myself in a piece of plastic I'd found in a dumpster. That's when I heard his voice. "You're gonna freeze out here." I looked up, squinting through the rain, and saw him. Tall, broad shoulders, dressed in a black coat that probably cost more than my old apartment's rent. He held an umbrella, his dark hair damp at the edges and his eyes gray like a stormy sea. watched me with something I couldn't place. Concern, maybe, or curiosity. Either way, I wasn't buying it. Men who looked like him didn't stop for women like me unless they wanted something. I'm fine, I snapped, clutching my backpack tighter, just waiting for the rain to let up. He didn't budge. Instead, he stepped closer, keeping the umbrella over me so the rain stopped hammering my face. "This is my hotel," he said, nodding at the building. "There's a room inside, warm bed, hot shower. You can crash there tonight." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Yeah, right. And what's the catch?" His face didn't change. No smirk, no sleaze, no catch. "There's a lock on the door and my staff's around. You can walk out whenever you want." Every survival instinct I had screamed to say no. I'd been on the streets long enough to know nothing came free, but my body was shaking, my fingers numb, and the thought of a hot shower was like a siren call. I studied him, looking for a lie in those gray eyes, but all I saw was a man who seemed tired, like he was carrying his own kind of weight. "What's your name?" I asked, stalling Nathaniel Harper. "Nate." He tilted his head. "You, Jada." I hesitated, then added, "Jada Coleman." "All right, Jada Coleman," he said, his voice low, almost gentle. "Let's get you out of this mess." I followed him inside, half expecting to regret it. The hotel lobby was all marble and soft lights, the kind of place I'd never set foot in before. Nate led me to an elevator, his presence filling the small space, and I caught a whiff of his cologne. Something woody and warm that made my stomach flip despite myself. He took me to a room on the top floor, handed me a key card, and pointed down the hall. "Towels are in the bathroom. I'll have some food sent up." "Why are you doing this?" I blurted as he turned to leave. He paused, his back to me, and for a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "I've been where you are. Not the same way, but close enough." He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes meeting mine. "Sleep tight, Jada." The door clicked shut and I locked it, shoving a chair against it for good measure. I stood there dripping on the plush carpet, my heart racing. The room was a dream king-sized bed, floor-to-ceiling windows, a bathroom bigger than my old studio apartment. I peeled off my wet clothes and stepped into the shower, letting the hot water burn away the cold. For the first time in months, I felt human again. When I stepped out wrapped in a towel, I saw a pile of clothes on the bed, a clean t-shirt and sweatpants left by some invisible staff member. But on the dresser was something else. A man's white dress shirt, crisp and folded with a note in neat handwriting. "Figured you'd want something softer." Nate. My breath hitched. I slipped the shirt on the fabric, cool against my skin, hanging loose but somehow fitting just right. It smelled faintly of him, that same woody cologne, and I caught myself inhaling deeper than I meant to. Standing in front of the mirror, my hair wet and curling, my brown skin glowing under the soft light. I looked different, not broken, not lost, just Jada. A knock at the door made me jump. "It's just me." Nate's voice came through muffled. "Got some coffee if you want it." I opened the door a crack, still cautious. He stood there holding 2 steaming mugs, his coat gone, sleeves rolled up to show strong forearms. His eyes flicked over me, lingering on the shirt. His shirt, and something shifted in his expression. A flicker of heat that sent a shiver down my spine. I felt it too. A pull I couldn't explain, like the air between us was charged with static. Our fingers brushed as I took the mug, and I swear I felt sparks. "Thanks," I muttered, stepping back to put space between us. "Sleep well," he said, his voice rougher than before, like he was fighting to keep it steady. He turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, my heart pounding, the coffee warming my hands but doing nothing for the fire in my chest. I barely slept that night, replaying that moment, his eyes, The way his shirt felt against my skin, I told myself to get a grip. He was a stranger, a rich guy with a savior complex, and I wasn't about to be anyone's damsel. I'd slip out at dawn, no strings, no debts. But when I woke to the smell of bacon and eggs wafting through the room, I found Nate in the hotel's kitchenette, flipping pancakes like he did it every day. "You didn't bolt," he said, glancing up with a half-smile that did dangerous things to my pulse. "Didn't want to miss breakfast," I shot back, sitting at the counter, despite my better judgment. We ate in awkward silence at first, me picking at my food, him sipping coffee like it was the most normal thing in the world. Then he said, "My assistant quit last week. I need someone sharp, someone who can handle chaos." "You in?" I nearly choked on my orange juice. "You're offering me a job. You don't even know me." "I know you're tough," he said, leaning forward, his eyes locked on mine. "And I know you're not afraid to call me out. That's more than I can say for most people." I meet. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "What's the deal?" "Room board salary. All of it," he said. 3-month trial. You can walk away any time. I studied him looking for the lie, but all I saw was a man who seemed to believe in me more than I believed in myself. "Fine," I said finally. "But I'm not your charity case, Nate. I work for what I get." "Deal," he said, and the way he smiled like he'd just won something made my heart skip. That was the start of it, my leap from the streets of Memphis to a world I never thought I'd touch. But it wasn't just about a job or a roof over my head. It was about Nate, about the way he saw me, really saw me when I'd forgotten how to see myself. And it was about the fire building between us, a spark that would either light up our lives or burn everything down. If that moment at the Mandarin Oriental made your heart race, or if Jada's fight to rise from the streets hit you right in the feels, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss the rest of this journey. Drop a comment below. What's a moment in your life that changed everything? Let's keep this story rolling. Chicago hit me like a slap in the face. Don't get me wrong. Memphis had its rough edges, but it was home warm and familiar with the blues humming through its veins. Chicago was all steel and glass, a city that chewed up dreamers and spat them out. Standing on the balcony of Nate's penthouse, 30 floors above the Chicago River, I felt like an imposter. The skyline sparkled, Lake Michigan stretching out like a dark mirror, the Willis Tower stabbing the clouds, but it didn't feel like mine. Not yet. It had been 2 weeks since I'd taken Nate's offer, trading the streets of Memphis for a job as his assistant. The gig was intense, organizing meetings with real estate tycoons, coordinating charity galas, keeping Nate's chaotic schedule from imploding. I was good at it too, better than I expected. I could charm a grumpy contractor into meeting deadlines or shut down a pushy investor with a smile and a few sharp words. Nate noticed I'd catch him watching me across the office, his gray eyes lingering a little too long, and it sent a thrill through me I wasn't ready to name. But Chicago wasn't Memphis. Back home I was Jada Coleman, the girl who could freestyle on Beale Street and make the crowd holler. Here I was, the black girl in a borrowed blazer, fielding side-eyes from Nate's staff who probably thought I was sleeping my way into the job. I missed the smell of barbecue, the sound of guitars, the way people knew my name. Most of all, I missed feeling like I belonged. Nate's penthouse didn't help. It was a palace, marble counters, floor-to-ceiling windows art that looked like it belonged in a museum. My room was bigger than my old apartment, with a bed so soft it felt like sinking into a cloud. But every morning I'd wake up expecting to hear the hum of Beale Street, only to be met with the distant wail of sirens and the cold hush of luxury. Nate tried to make it easier. He'd leave notes on the fridge. Coffee's fresh, help yourself, or blast old-school R&B in the kitchen while making breakfast. It was cute seeing a billionaire flip eggs in a t-shirt, but it also scared me. The closer we got, the more I wondered what he saw in me. A project, a rebound, or something real. That question burned hotter the night we stayed late at his office, a sleek glass tower overlooking Millennium Park. We were finalizing a deal for a new hotel in Miami, papers scattered across the conference table, takeout containers piling up. I was on my third coffee, my hair pulled into a messy bun when Nate leaned back in his chair, loosening his tie. "You're killing it, Jada," he said, his voice low, almost like he was surprised. Most people would have cracked under this pressure by now. I smirked, scribbling a note on a contract. "Yeah, well, surviving on the streets teaches you a thing or two about handling chaos." He laughed, a deep, warm sound that made my stomach flip. "Fair enough. But seriously, you're running circles around my old assistant. How'd you get so good at this?" I shrugged, not meeting his eyes. "My daddy always said, if you're gonna do something, do it like you mean it. I don't half-ass anything." Nate's smile faded, replaced by something softer, more intense. I can see that it's rare. The air shifted heavy with unspoken things. I looked up, and his gaze locked on mine, those gray eyes pulling me in like a tide. My heart kicked up a notch, and I felt that same electric pull from that rainy night in Memphis when I'd stood in his shirt, his cologne clinging to my skin. I broke the moment, grabbing a stack of papers. "We should finish this before midnight, boss." "Boss, huh?" He raised an eyebrow, leaning forward. "Thought we were past that." "Gotta keep it professional," I teased, but my voice came out shakier than I meant. We worked another hour, the city lights twinkling outside until Nate suggested a break. He pulled a bottle of bourbon from a cabinet, pouring us each a glass. "To surviving chaos," he said, clinking his glass against mine. The bourbon burned, going down, warming me from the inside out. We moved to the office's leather couch, the city sprawling below us. Nate talked about growing up in Chicago's South Side, scraping by in a neighborhood where gunshots were lullabies. "I built all this," he said, gesturing at the office so I'd never go back. "But sometimes it feels like I traded one cage for another." I nodded, sipping my drink. "I get it. Memphis was my cage too. Loved it, hated it, couldn't leave it. When Daddy died, I thought I'd lost my anchor. Turns out I just lost my way." He looked at me. Really looked like he was seeing past the tough girl front I'd spent years perfecting. "You found your way. Jada, you're here." "Here's temporary," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't belong in your world. Nate." He set his glass down, leaning closer, his knee brushing mine. "Says who? You belong anywhere. You damn well please." The words hit hard, stirring something deep in me. I wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at the edges. Before I could respond, he reached out, tucking a loose curl behind my ear. His fingers lingered, grazing my cheek, and my breath caught. The room felt too small, too warm. The bourbon amplifying every sensation. I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from him, and when his eyes dropped to my lips, I swear I forgot how to breathe. "Jada," he said, his voice rough, like he was fighting himself. "Tell me to stop." "I didn't. I couldn't." My body moved before my brain caught up, leaning into him, my hand resting on his chest. His heart pounded under my palm, matching mine. He tilted my chin up his thumb, brushing my lower lip, and the world narrowed to the space between us. His lips were inches from mine, so close I could taste the bourbon on his breath when my foot slipped on the slick floor, sending me stumbling into his lap. We froze, my hands gripping his shoulders, his arms steadying me. My dress had ridden up, exposing the curve of my thigh, and his fingers tightened on my waist, a low groan escaping him. The heat of his touch seared through me, setting every nerve on fire. I felt the hard lines of his body pressed against mine, his breath hot against my neck, and for a moment I wanted to let go, to let this pull us under. But fear, sharp and cold, cut through the haze. I pushed off him, standing on shaky legs, my voice trembling. "Don't make this messy, Nate." "We can't." He stood, running a hand through his hair, his jaw tight. You're right. I'm sorry, Damn it, Jada, you're under my skin. I turned away, my heart racing, trying to ignore the way my body screamed to close the distance. Good night, Nate, I said, grabbing my bag and heading for the elevator. But as the doors closed, I could still feel his eyes on me, burning through every wall I'd built. The next few days were a tightrope walk. I threw myself into work, keeping things strictly professional. But every glance, every accidental brush of his hand felt like a spark waiting to ignite. Nate didn't push, but he didn't back off either. He'd bring me coffee, ask about my day slip in little compliments that made my resolve wobble. You've got a gift for this, he'd say, or that smile's dangerous. Coleman. I'd roll my eyes, but inside I was a mess. Then Vanessa showed up. It was at a charity auction in the Art Institute of Chicago, a glitzy affair with millionaires bidding on paintings like they were buying groceries. I was in a black dress, simple but sharp, working the room to make sure everything ran smoothly. Nate was schmoozing with investors, his charm on full display when I saw her. Vanessa Blake gliding in like she owned the place, blonde, flawless, her red gown screaming money. I'd heard about her from Nate's team, the ex who'd left him for a rival taking his trust and a chunk of his company's secrets with her. She made a beeline for me, her smile as fake as her lashes. You must be Jada, she said, her voice sweet enough to rot teeth. Nate's new assistant, right? That's me, I said, keeping my tone even though my gut twisted. She leaned in, lowering her voice. He's got a thing for fixing broken things, you know? Lost causes strays, don't get too comfortable. He'll move on when the novelty wears off. Her words landed like a punch, hitting every insecurity I'd been shoving down. I forced a smile, refusing to let her see me flinch. Thanks for the heads up, but I'm not here to play your games. She laughed, a tinkling sound that made my skin crawl, and sauntered off to join Nate across the room. I watched them talk, her hand brushing his arm, his face unreadable. My chest tightened, a mix of jealousy and doubt. I hated myself for feeling. Was she right? Was I just a phase away for Nate to feel good about himself? That night I sat alone in my room at the penthouse, staring at the city lights. Nate knocked his voice soft through the door. Jada, you okay? I opened it, arms crossed. What's the deal with Vanessa? She seems real cozy for an ex. He sighed, stepping inside his tie loose like he'd been tugging at it. She's history. She showed up to stir trouble. That's all. Stir trouble, how I pressed, by reminding me I don't belong here. He looked at me, his eyes fierce. You belong wherever you want to be, Jada. Don't let her get in your head, easy for you to say. I shot back. You're not the one everyone's whispering about. Nate's charity case. The girl from the streets. He stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. You think I care what they say? I see you, Jada. The real you. The woman who's tougher than anyone in this city, who's got a fire I can't stop thinking about. My breath hitched, his words unraveling me. He was close now. Too close, his cologne wrapping around me like a warm blanket. I wanted to push him away to protect myself, but my body betrayed me, leaning into the heat of him. His hand cupped my cheek, his thumb tracing my jaw, and I felt my walls crumbling. Tell me you don't feel this. He whispered, his lips so close I could almost taste them. I didn't answer. I couldn't. All I could do was stare into those gray eyes, my heart pounding, knowing one wrong move could break us both. But before I could decide, his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He cursed under his breath. Stepping back, and I took the chance to slip away, my body still humming with what we'd almost done. Vanessa's words stuck with me, a poison I couldn't shake. Was I just a project to Nate, a way to soothe his guilt or fill the hole Vanessa left? I threw myself into work, keeping him at arm's length. but every day felt like a battle against the pull between us. I didn't know how long I could keep fighting, not when every look, every touch made me want to burn my rules to the ground. But trouble was brewing bigger than my doubts. Vanessa wasn't done with us, and Chicago's elite were watching, waiting for me to fall. I'd survived the streets of Memphis, but this city was a different kind of jungle, and I was starting to wonder if I had what it took to make it out alive, or if I'd lose my heart in the process. Asheville was like stepping into a postcard. The Blue Ridge Mountains rolled out around us, all green peaks and misty valleys, the air crisp with the scent of pine and earth. After weeks of Chicago's concrete jungle, this place felt like a deep breath I didn't know I needed. Nate had called it a work retreat, a chance to finalize plans for a new eco-resort he was pitching to investors. But the way he kept stealing glances at me on the drive down, his knuckles grazing mine when he handed me a coffee, told me this was more than business. And damn if I wasn't starting to hope he was right. We pulled up to a cedar cabin tucked into the woods, its wide porch overlooking a valley where a waterfall glittered in the distance. The place was cozy but luxe. Think leather armchairs, a stone fireplace, and windows that framed the mountains like paintings. My room was down the hall from Nate's, close enough to make my pulse jump every time I heard his footsteps. I told myself to focus, to keep my walls up, but Vanessa's words still echoed in my head. Lost causes strays. Was that all I was to him? Or was this feeling, this pull that made my skin hum when he was near something real? The first day was all work. Spreadsheets, blueprints, endless calls with Nate's team. I held my own, throwing out ideas for community outreach that made Nate's eyes light up. "You're a natural," he said, scribbling a note. "This is why I hired you." "Yeah, sure," I teased, leaning back in my chair. "You just wanted someone to keep your coffee hot." He grinned, that slow, dangerous smile that did things to my insides. "Maybe. But you're making it hard to stick to coffee." I rolled my eyes, ignoring the heat creeping up my neck, and dove back into the work. But every laugh, every shared glance chipped away at my resolve. By the time we wrapped up, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in pinks and golds. Nate suggested a hike to the waterfall, and I agreed, needing the fresh air to clear my head. The trail was narrow-lined with wildflowers and mossy rocks, the sound of rushing water growing louder with every step. Nate walked ahead, his flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows, and I couldn't help noticing the way his shoulders moved, strong and sure. He caught me staring and smirked, eyes on the trail. "Coleman. Don't trip. Worry about yourself, Harper." I shot back, but my voice was shakier than I liked. We reached the waterfall just as the last light faded its spray, catching the sunset like a prism. I stood at the edge, letting the mist cool my face, and felt something loosen in my chest. "This place," I said almost to myself. "It's like it knows how to hold you together when you're falling apart." Nate stepped closer, his voice soft. "Yeah, it's why I come here when things get heavy." I turned to him, curious. "What's heavy for you?" "You've got the world in your pocket." He looked out at the water, his jaw tight. "Money doesn't fix everything. It doesn't keep you warm at night or make the ghosts go away." "Ghosts?" I asked, my heart picking up. He hesitated, then said, "My mom died when I was a kid. Dad followed a few years later. I was raised by my Aunt Clara, but I pushed her away when I got older. Thought I didn't need anyone. Built all this." He gestured vaguely to prove I was enough, but it's lonely as hell at the top. His honesty hit me hard, cracking open something I'd kept locked tight. My daddy was my world. I said, my voice barely above the waterfall's roar. When he got sick, I thought I could save him, danced my ass off, worked double shifts, but it wasn't enough. When he died, I lost more than him. I lost me. Nate's eyes met mine, raw and unguarded. "You're still here?" "Jada, that's more than most people could manage." The air between us thickened, charged with a truth we'd both been dodging. I wanted to say something, anything to break the tension, but my words dried up. He reached out his fingers, brushing my arm, and my skin caught fire under his touch. "Come on," he said, his voice rough. "Let's head back." That night, Nate's Aunt Clara came by the cabin, and I saw where he got his stubborn streak. Clara was a 460-something with warm brown skin and a laugh that filled the room. She ran a bakery in Asheville, her hands dusted with flour even now, and she hugged me like we'd known each other forever. Over dinner, her famous cornbread and smoked brisket. She told me stories about Nate as a kid, all skinny legs and big dreams, sneaking cookies from her kitchen. "He was a handful," she said, winking at him. "Still is." "I bet." Nate groaned, but his eyes were soft. "Don't scare her off, Clara." "Scare me?" I laughed. "I've dealt with worse than you, Harper." Clara's gaze sharpened like she saw right through me. "You're tough." "Jada, that's good. He needs someone who can keep up." Later, as Clara left, she pulled me aside. "He's got a good heart, but he's scared to use it. Be patient with him, all right?" Her words stuck with me, stirring up a mix of hope and fear. Nate and I cleaned up the kitchen, the cabin quiet except for the crackle of the fireplace. I was wiping down the counter when he came up behind me, his hand brushing mine as he reached for a dish. The contact sent a jolt through me, and I froze, my pulse racing. "You're quiet tonight," he said, his voice low, close enough that I felt his breath on my neck. "Just thinking," I said, turning to face him. "Big mistake." He was right there, inches away, his flannel stretched across his chest, his eyes searching mine. The kitchen felt too small, the air too thick about what he asked. Stepping closer, his hand resting on the counter beside me, caging me in without touching, I swallowed, my mouth dry. About how I'm supposed to keep my head on straight when you're looking at me like that? His lips curved a slow, wicked smile that made my knees weak. "And how am I looking at you?" "Jada, like your trouble," I said, but my voice was all breath, no bite. He leaned in his forehead, nearly touching mine, his voice a rumble. "Maybe I am, but you're not running." I should have. Every instinct screamed to push him away, to protect myself from the fall I knew was coming. But my body had other plans. My hands found his chest, fingers curling into his shirt, and I felt his heart pounding under my palms. "Nate," I whispered, half warning, half plea. He didn't move, giving me every chance to pull back. But I didn't. I tilted my head, closing the gap, and our lips met, soft at first, tentative like we were testing the waters. Then he groaned, low and hungry, and the kiss deepened, all heat and need. His hands slid to my waist, pulling me against him, and I melted my fingers, tangling in his hair. His mouth was fire, tasting of whiskey and want, and I pressed closer, feeling the hard lines of his body, the way he trembled under my touch. The world fell away, leaving just us, just this. We broke apart, gasping my lips, tingling my body alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. His eyes were dark, wild, and he rested his forehead against mine, his breath ragged. "Jada," he said, like my name was a prayer. "Tell me you felt that." I laughed, shaky and raw. "You know I did." He kissed me again, slower this time, his hands sliding up my back, tracing the curve of my spine. I arched into him, my nails grazing his neck, and he made a sound that sent a shiver through me. We stumbled toward the couch, lips locked until I pulled back, my heart racing. "We gotta slow down," I said, my voice hoarse. It's a lot." He nodded, his hands still on my hips, his eyes locked on mine. "Whatever you need." "Jada, I'm not going anywhere." I stepped back, trying to catch my breath, but the air still crackled between us. "Good night, Nate." I said, heading for my room, though every part of me wanted to stay. The next morning, Clara invited us to her bakery, a cozy spot in downtown Asheville with the smell of fresh biscuits and coffee. She pulled me into the kitchen, showing me how to knead dough, her hands steady and sure. Nate's mama loved to bake, she said, her voice soft. He doesn't talk about her much, but he carries her with him. Always has. I glanced at Nate through the kitchen window, laughing with a customer, his smile easy and unguarded. He's complicated, I said more to myself than to her. Clara chuckled. That's one way to put it, but he's worth it if you're brave enough to stick around. Her words hit deep, stirring up the fear I'd been dodging. Was I brave enough? Not just for Nate, but for myself. I'd spent so long surviving. I wasn't sure I knew how to live. That afternoon, Nate and I hiked another trail, this one leading to a clearing with a view of the mountains stretching endless and blue. We sat on a blanket sharing a thermos of coffee, and I told him about my brother Darius, how we'd fallen out after Daddy's death. He's out there in Memphis probably fixing cars and dodging trouble, I said, my voice tight. I keep thinking I should reach out, but what if he doesn't want me back? Nate took my hand, his thumb brushing my knuckles. He's your family. Jada. That's worth fighting for. Trust me. I learned that the hard way with Clara. I looked at him. His face softened by the golden light, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about a kiss or a spark. It was about trust, about letting someone in, after years of keeping the world at arm's length. You're making it real hard to stay mad at you, Harper, I said, nudging his shoulder. Good, he said, his grin boyish and bright. I'm playing for keeps. That night my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Jada, it's Darius. I'm in trouble. Need to talk. My heart stopped, a mix of relief and dread flooding me. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Whatever trouble Darius was in, I had to help him. But it meant going back to Memphis, back to the life I'd left behind, and it meant facing the truth about what Nate and I were becoming. I found Nate by the fireplace, his face lit by the flames. Darius reached out. I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. I need to go to Memphis. He stood, his eyes searching mine. Then we go together. I shook my head. This is my fight, Nate. I can't drag you into it. You're not dragging me, he said, stepping closer, his voice fierce. I'm with you, Jada. All the way. His words wrapped around me warm and solid, but they also scared me, because if I let him in, if I let this love take root, there'd be no going back, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what came next. Memphis welcomed me back, like an old friend who hadn't forgotten my scars. The air was thick with the smell of barbecue and river mud, and Beale Street pulsed with neon lights, and the wail of blues guitars. But beneath the music, I felt the weight of the city, the same streets where I'd danced, laughed, and lost everything. Coming back wasn't just about Darius. It was about facing the Jada I'd left behind, the one who'd fought to survive, and wasn't sure she could trust the woman I was becoming. Nate insisted on coming with me, and I let him, though. Part of me wished I'd done this alone. His private jet landed us in Memphis at dusk, the Mississippi River glowing gold under the setting sun. We checked into a boutique hotel on Union Avenue, not the one where we'd met, but close enough to stir memories of that rainy night. My room was across the hall from his, and every time our eyes met, I felt the echo of that kiss in Asheville, hot and reckless, pulling me toward something I wasn't sure I could handle. Darius's text had been vague. I'm in trouble. Need to talk. But the address he sent led to a gritty auto shop on the edge of South Memphis, all grease stains and rusted car parts. I found him under a beat-up Chevy, his hands black with oil, his face harder than I remembered. Darius was 5 years older, built like a linebacker with the same deep brown eyes as me, but shadowed by years of regret. He slid out from under the car, wiping his hands, and froze when he saw me. "Jada," he said, his voice rough, like he wasn't sure I was real. "Hey, big brother," I said, forcing a smile, though my chest ached. "You look like hell." He snorted, but his eyes flicked to Nate, who stood a few steps behind me, hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. "Who's the suit?" "Nate Harper," I said. "My boss." The word felt wrong, too small for what Nate was becoming. But I didn't know how to explain us not to Darius, not even to myself. Darius's jaw tightened. "Boss, huh? You rollin' with billionaires now." "Something like that," I said, dodging the jab. "What's going on?" "D. Your text scared me." He glanced around like he was checking for eavesdroppers, then nodded toward the back of the shop. "Not here. Let's talk private." Nate stayed by the car, giving us space, and I followed Darius to a cramped office that smelled of motor oil and stale coffee. He shut the door, leaning against a desk cluttered with invoices. "I owe some people money," he said, his voice low. "Bad people. Gambling debt, mostly. They're leaning on me hard. Jada, I didn't want to drag you into this, but I'm out of moves." My stomach dropped. "How much? 10 grand, he said, wincing. "Maybe more with interest." I cursed under my breath. 10 grand was pocket change to Nate, but to me it was a mountain. I'd saved a little from my job, but not enough. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice sharp. "You ghosted me after Daddy died." "Darius? I thought you were done with me." His face crumpled, and for a moment I saw the brother who'd braided my hair as a kid, who'd snuck me candy when Mama wasn't looking. "I was ashamed," he said. "You were out there fighting for Daddy, and I was running. I couldn't face you." I wanted to stay mad, but the pain in his eyes mirrored my own. "We're family," I said, my voice softer. "You don't get to run from that." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm trying, Jada. But these guys, they don't mess around. I'll figure something out," I said, though I had no idea how. "Just don't disappear again. Okay?" We hugged, his arms tight around me, and for the first time in years I felt a piece of home slot back into place. But when we stepped outside, Nate was waiting, his face tense. "Everything all right?" he asked, his eyes flicking between us. "Yeah," I said, but the lie tasted bitter. I didn't want to drag Nate into this mess, but I was starting to realize I might not have a choice. That night, Nate and I grabbed dinner at a dive bar on Beale Street, the kind of place where the beer was cheap and the music was loud. I needed the noise, the chaos to drown out the worry gnawing at me. Nate seemed out of place in his crisp shirt, but he rolled with it, tapping his foot to a blues band and stealing fries from my plate. For a moment it felt normal, like we were just two people, not a billionaire and a girl trying to outrun her past. "You gonna tell me what's up with Darius?" he asked, leaning closer to be heard over the music. I sighed, picking at my burger. "He's in deep with some loan sharks. Owes more than I can cover." Nate's face hardened. "Let me help. I can—" "No." I cut him off sharper than I meant. "This is my family, Nate. I don't need you swooping in like some knight in shining armor." He leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "I'm not trying to play hero. Jada, I care about you. That means I care about this." His words hit hard, stirring up a mix of warmth and fear. I wanted to believe him, but Vanessa's voice crept in whispering doubts. "You don't get it," I said, my voice low. "People like me, we don't get saved. We fight. We scrape. We survive. I can't owe you, Nate. Not like that." He reached for my hand, his touch warm and steady. "You think I'm keeping score? I'm in this. Jada." All the way. I pulled my hand back, my heart racing. You say that now. But what happens when the shine wears off? When your fancy friends start talking about the homeless girl you're slumming it with? His jaw clenched, hurt flashing in his eyes. Is that what you think? That I'm ashamed of you? I didn't answer. Couldn't. The band switched to a slow, aching song and I stood needing air. I'm gonna step outside, I muttered, weaving through the crowd. The street was cooler, the neon lights blurring as I leaned against a brick wall, my breath shaky. I hated how much I wanted him, how much it scared me. Footsteps sounded behind me, and I knew it was Nate. Before he spoke. Jada. He said, his voice soft but firm. I'm not letting you push me away. I turned ready to argue, but he was closer than I expected, his body inches from mine, his eyes burning with something that stole my words. You're not a project, he said, stepping even closer, his hand brushing my hip. You're not a phase. You're the only damn thing that feels real to me. My breath hitched my body, betraying me as I leaned into him. Nate, we can't. We can, he said, his voice rough, desperate. He cupped my face, his thumb tracing my cheek, and before I could stop myself, I kissed him. Hard hungry, like I was drowning, and he was air. His hand slid to my waist, pulling me against him, and I felt every inch of him strong, warm, alive. My fingers dug into his shoulders, my lips parting as his tongue met mine, a slow, searing dance that set my skin on fire. He pressed me against the wall, his body pinning mine, and I gasped into his mouth, the world spinning. His hands roamed, one slipping under my jacket, grazing the curve of my back. And I arched into him, wanting more, needing everything. A car horn blared, snapping us back to reality. We broke apart, panting, my lips swollen, his eyes wild. Jesus! Jada! He said, his voice hoarse. You're gonna kill me. I laughed, shaky and raw, my body still humming. You started it. He grinned, but it faded fast. I mean it, Jada. I'm not going anywhere, but you gotta let me in. I nodded, my throat tight. I'm trying. We walked back to the hotel in silence, his hand brushing mine, the tension between us, a live wire. But when we reached my room, I paused, my keycard in hand. Good night, Nate, I said, though every part of me wanted to pull him inside. Night, Jada, he said, his voice low, his eyes holding mine until the door clicked shut. The next day I met Darius at a diner, the kind with sticky tables and coffee that tasted like regret. I slid him an envelope with what I'd saved, $3,000 a drop in the bucket. It's a start, I said. I'll get the rest. He shook his head, pushing it back. I can't take this. You're out here living some big life now, Jada. Don't get pulled back into my mess. You're my brother, I said, my voice fierce. Your mess is my mess. He looked at me, his eyes softening. You always were the stubborn one. We laughed, and for a moment it felt like old times. But then my phone buzzed with a news alert and my stomach dropped. A gossip blog had posted about me. Nate Harper's mystery woman from homeless to high society. The article dug into my past, splashing photos of me dancing on Beale Street, calling me a charity case. And worse, Vanessa's name wasn't mentioned, but her fingerprints were all over it. Nate found me at the hotel, my face buried in my hands. I saw the article. He said, sitting beside me, I'm handling it. My team's on damage control. Damage control, I snapped, standing. This isn't a PR problem. Nate, this is my life. They're tearing me apart, and it's because of you. He flinched, but his voice stayed steady. I know it's a mess, Jada, but we'll fix it. Together. Together, I laughed, bitter and sharp. Your world's chewing me up, and you think a press release is gonna fix that? What about your board, your investors? They're gonna want me gone. Let them try, he said, his eyes blazing. You're not going anywhere unless you want to. I wanted to believe him, but the article had cracked something open, exposing every fear I'd buried. I need to handle Darius first, I said, my voice flat. Then we'll talk. He nodded, but the hurt in his eyes stayed with me. I'm here, Jada. Whenever you're ready. That night I lay awake, the article's words looping in my head. Vanessa was playing dirty and she wasn't done. Worse. Nate's board was circling, whispering about optics and distractions. I'd fought too hard to let them break me, but the cost was piling up. Darius's debt. My past splashed across the internet. The pressure of loving a man whose world I didn't fit into it was all closing in. I slipped out to the hotel's rooftop, needing air, and found Nate there, staring at the Memphis skyline. Couldn't sleep, he asked, his voice soft. Not with my name in the tabloids, I said, leaning against the railing beside him. He turned to me, his face lit by the city lights. I'm sorry, Jada. I should have protected you better. It's not your job to protect me, I said, but my voice cracked. I don't know if I can do this, Nate. Your life, it's too big for me. He stepped closer, his hand finding mine. My life's nothing without you in it. The words hit like a punch, and before I could stop myself, I kissed him, desperate and raw. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me close, and we sank into each other, the city humming below. His hands slid under my shirt, warm against my skin, and I shivered, pressing myself closer, needing to feel him to drown out the noise. We stumbled to a shadowed corner, lips locked, bodies pressed tight until I pulled back, gasping, my heart pounding. We're playing with fire, I said, my voice shaky. Then let it burn, he said, his eyes locked on mine, and I knew we were in too deep to turn back. Miami was a fever dream of glitz and heat, all palm trees and neon nights. The Mandarin Oriental's ballroom glowed like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers throwing light over tables draped in white linen, champagne flutes sparkling in every hand. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my emerald gown catching the light, my heart hammering like a drum. This was Vanessa Blake's engagement party, a stage for her to flaunt her new life with Nate's rival Connor Reed. But it was also a battlefield, and I was walking in with Nate by my side, knowing every eye would be on us. The past week in Memphis had stretched me thin. Darius's debt, the tabloid hit piece, the whispers from Nate's board, they'd piled up like bricks on my chest. But Nate had stood by me, his faith in us unshaken even when I doubted myself. We'd flown to Miami to face Vanessa, to shut down her games once and for all. I'd spent hours practicing my walk in heels, memorizing small talk to blend in with the elite. But deep down I knew none of it would matter. They'd see me for what I was, a girl from Beale Street out of her depth. The question was whether I'd let that break me. Nate squeezed my hand as we stepped through the gilded doors, his gray eyes steady. We don't have to stay long, he murmured, his lips brushing my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. Just long enough to show up, smile, and get out. Easy for you to say, I whispered back, forcing a grin. You're not the one they're gonna dissect. He chuckled low and warm. Let 'em try. You're tougher than all of 'em combined. The room buzzed as we entered, heads turning, whispers rippling like a breeze. I felt the weight of their stares, curious, judgmental, some outright hostile. My gown hugged my curves, the deep green setting off my brown skin, and I held my chin high, refusing to shrink. Nate's hand rested on the small of my back, a quiet anchor, and I grabbed a champagne flute from a passing waiter, needing something to steady my nerves. Then I saw her, Vanessa, gliding through the crowd like a shark in a red gown. Her blonde hair swept up her smile, sharp as a blade. She made a beeline for us, her fiancé Connor trailing behind, a tall guy with a slick smile and eyes that sized me up like I was a deal to be closed. Nate. Darling, Vanessa purred, air kissing his cheek, her gaze flicking to me. And Jada, is it? You clean up nicely, Vanessa, I said, my voice cool, though my grip on the champagne tightened. Congrats on the engagement. Looks like you landed a big fish. Her smile twitched just enough to show I'd hit a nerve. Connor laughed too loud and extended a hand. Connor. Reed. Pleasure to meet Nate's latest project. Nate's jaw tightened, but I shook Connor's hand, my smile razor sharp. Jada Coleman, and I'm nobody's project. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, but she recovered fast, turning to the crowd. Everyone you must meet. Nate's new assistant. Quite the story, isn't she? From the streets of Memphis to... Well, this... The room went quiet, the air thick with anticipation. I felt Nate tense beside me, his hand pressing harder against my back, but I didn't need saving. I stepped forward, my voice clear and steady. You're right, Vanessa. I was homeless 6 months ago, slept on park benches, ate out of dumpsters. But here's the thing, I'm not ashamed of it. I fought to survive and I'm still fighting. What's your excuse for trying to tear me down? A few gasps broke the silence, followed by murmurs. Vanessa's face flushed her composure, slipping. I'm just saying, she said, her voice tight. It's a big leap. Some might wonder if you're here for... other reasons, like what I shot back. My eyes locked on hers, Nate's money, his status. Let me be clear, I don't need a man to define me. I'm here because I choose to be. Can you say the same? The crowd shifted some, nodding, others whispering. Connor cleared his throat, trying to diffuse the tension, but Vanessa's smile was gone, replaced by a cold glare. Before she could respond, Nate stepped forward, his hand finding mine, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. Jada's not just here, he said, his eyes never leaving mine. She's my home, my everything, and anyone who can't see that doesn't belong in my world. The words hit me like a tidal wave, the same ones he'd said in that moment I'd replayed 1,000 times. But hearing them now in front of this crowd, with Vanessa's stunned face in the background, they felt bigger, heavier. The room erupted in whispers, cameras flashing, but all I could see was Nate, his gray eyes fierce with love, his hand anchoring me to this moment. He raised my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles, and my heart squeezed so tight I thought it might burst. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came. Connor tugged her away, muttering something about bad press, and the crowd parted, some clapping, others staring in shock. I barely noticed. Nate pulled me close, his arm around my waist, and whispered, "Let's get out of here." We didn't make it to the door. A voice called out, rough and familiar, stopping me, cold. "Jada." I turned, my breath catching. Darius stood at the edge of the ballroom in a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit his face, a mix of pride and nerves. "Darius," I said, my voice breaking. "What the hell are you doing here?" He crossed the room, ignoring the stares, and pulled me into a hug. "Couldn't let you fight this alone," he said, his voice thick. "Not again." Nate stepped back, giving us space, but his eyes were warm like he'd known Darius was coming. "How'd you get here?" I asked, pulling back to look at my brother. Darius glanced at Nate, then back at me. "Your man pulled some strings, flew me out, said you needed backup." I turned to Nate, my throat tight. "You did this?" He shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Family matters, right?" Before I could respond, Darius's face darkened. "There's something else," he said, lowering his voice. "Those loan sharks. Vanessa's behind it. She tracked me down, offered to pay off my debt if I'd spill dirt on you. Said she wanted to expose you. I told her to shove it." The room spun, Vanessa's earlier taunts snapping into focus. She hadn't just leaked that article, she'd tried to buy my brother to destroy me. Rage flared hot and sharp, but Darius grabbed my arm. "Let it go, Jada. She's not worth it." I looked at Nate, his face hard with anger, but he nodded. "He's right. She's done. We've got what we need to shut her down." "How?" I asked, my voice shaking. My team's been digging, he said. Emails, payments, proof, she's been meddling. It's enough to keep her out of our lives for good. The weight of it hit me. Vanessa's schemes, Darius's loyalty, Nate's unwavering support. I'd come here expecting a fight, but I'd found something stronger. A family, a love, a future. I grabbed Darius's hand, then Nate's, and squeezed. "Let's go home," I said, my voice steady for the first time all night. We didn't go back to the hotel. Instead, Nate drove us to a quiet stretch of South Beach, the ocean black and endless, under a silver moon. Darius stayed in the car, giving us space, and Nate and I walked barefoot on the sand, the waves lapping at our feet. The night was warm, the air salty, and I felt the tension of the evening start to unravel. "You were incredible back there," Nate said, his voice low, his hand brushing mine as we walked. I laughed, kicking at the surf. I was terrified. Thought I'd trip over my own feet and make a fool of myself. He stopped, turning to face me, his eyes catching the moonlight. "You owned that room, Jada. You always do." My heart skipped, his words sinking deep. I stepped closer, the sand cool under my toes, and let my fingers trace the line of his jaw. "You're not so bad yourself, Harper." That my home line, smooth. He grinned, but it faded into something softer, more vulnerable, meant every word. "You're it for me, Jada. You gotta know that." I did. God, I did. But hearing it standing here with the ocean roaring and the stars above it felt like a promise I could finally believe. I rose on my toes, kissing him soft at first, then deeper, hungrier. His hands slid to my hips, pulling me against him, and I felt the heat of his body through my dress, the way he trembled under my touch. The kiss grew urgent, my fingers tangling in his hair, his lips trailing to my neck, leaving a line of fire across my skin. I gasped, arching into him, the waves crashing around us like they were cheering us on. He pulled back, his breath ragged, his eyes dark with want. "Jada," he said, his voice rough. "You're driving me crazy." "Good," I said, my voice husky, my hands sliding under his shirt, feeling the taut muscles of his back. "'Cause you're doing the same to me." We sank onto the sand, the world narrowing to the heat of his mouth, the press of his body, the way our breaths synced like a song. His hands roamed, one slipping to the small of my back, the other tracing the curve of my thigh, and I shivered, pulling him closer. The ocean drowned out everything but us. And for a moment, I let myself forget the world, Vanessa, the tabloids, the doubts. It was just Nate, just me, just this fire we couldn't put out. A wave rolled in, soaking us, and we laughed, breaking apart our clothes, damp and clinging. "We're a mess," I said, brushing sand from his shirt. "The best kind," he said, kissing me again, softer this time, like a vow. We sat there wrapped in each other, the stars bright above. "What now?" I asked, my voice quiet. Now he set his arm around me. "We go back to Memphis, help Darius, build something real. Together." I nodded, my heart full together. Back at the hotel, Darius was waiting, his face lighter than I'd seen in years. "You two sorted?" he asked, smirking. "Working on it," I said, nudging him. "You sticking around?" "Try and stop me," he said, pulling me into a hug. "I'm done running." "Jada." Nate watched us, his smile quiet but real. I knew the fight wasn't over. Vanessa's schemes, the board's pressure, my own fears. But for the first time I felt ready. Not because Nate was some savior, but because we were a team stronger together than apart. The next morning, Nate's team sent proof of Vanessa's meddling to the press, framing it as a misstep to avoid a lawsuit, but ensuring she'd stay clear. Darius agreed to a payment plan for his debt with Nate's help, but on my terms, no handouts, just a loan I'd repay, and me. I started to see myself not as the girl from the streets, but as the woman I was becoming, one who could love, fight, and build a life worth living. But Miami had changed us. That night in the ballroom, those words, "She's my home," hadn't just silenced Vanessa. They'd rewritten our story, binding us in a way I couldn't deny. And as we boarded the plane back to Memphis, Nate's hand in mine, I knew the hardest battles were still ahead, but I also knew we'd face them together no matter what. The Blue Ridge Mountains stretched out like a promise, their peaks kissed by a sunset that bled orange and purple across the sky. I stood on a rocky outcrop, the wind tugging at my curls, my boots scuffing the dirt. Asheville had become our sanctuary, the place where Nate and I had first let our guards down, where we'd kissed under a waterfall and started to build something real. Now, weeks after the chaos of Miami, we were back, and the air felt charged with something I couldn't name. Memphis had tested us. Darius was safe, his debt under control thanks to a payment plan we'd worked out my money, Nate's resources, and a lot of stubborn pride. Vanessa's schemes had fizzled out, her reputation bruised by the press leaks we'd orchestrated. Nate's board had backed off, at least for now. But the whispers about me lingered, a reminder that his world would never fully embrace me. Yet here we were, Nate's hand in mine, his gray eyes warm with a quiet certainty that made my heart skip. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. "You're quiet," Nate said, his voice low as we hiked toward a lookout point he'd promised would blow my mind. His flannel shirt was rolled up, his hair mussed by the breeze, and damn if he didn't look like he belonged here, not in some penthouse. "Just soaking it in," I said, gesturing at the mountains. "This place makes Memphis feel like a lifetime ago." He nodded his thumb, brushing my knuckles. "Good or bad?" "Both," I admitted. "I'm not the girl I was back then, but I'm still figuring out who I am now." He stopped, turning to face me, his eyes searching mine. "You're Jada Coleman, the woman who took on a room full of snobs and won, the woman who's got my heart in a chokehold." I laughed, shoving his shoulder. "Smooth talker. Keep that up, and I might start believing you." "Good," he said, his grin wicked, "'cause I'm not letting you forget it." We reached the lookout as the sun dipped below the horizon, the valley below us glowing like a sea of fireflies. Nate spread a blanket on the grass, pulling me down beside him. We sat there, shoulders touching the silence, comfortable but heavy with something unspoken. I felt it in the way he looked at me, the way his fingers lingered when he passed me a thermos of coffee. "Jada," he said. Finally, his voice rougher than usual. "There's something I need to say." My heart kicked up a mix of nerves and hope. "What's that?" He turned to me, his face lit by the fading light, and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. My breath caught the world narrowing to the two of us. "I was dead inside before you," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "I had money, power, everything a man could want, but it was all smoke. Then I found you shivering under that awning in Memphis, and you woke me up. You showed me what it means to fight, to love, to build a home." He opened the box, revealing a ring, a simple band with a single pearl, its luster catching the twilight. "It's not a diamond," he said, almost shy, but it reminded me of the Mississippi of where we started. "Jada, I don't just want you in my life. I want you forever. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision, my throat so tight I could barely speak. I'd spent so long running, surviving, afraid to hope for more. But here was Nate, offering me a future, not as a savior, but as a partner. I pulled him to me, cupping his face, my lips brushing his. "Yes," I whispered, my voice breaking. 1,000 times. Yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, his hands trembling, and then he kissed me deep, desperate, like he was sealing a vow. I melted into him, my fingers tangling in his hair, the mountains fading as the world became just us. His hands slid to my waist, pulling me closer, and I felt the heat of him, the way our bodies fit like they were made for each other. The kiss slowed, softening into something tender, and when we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, our breaths mingling. "You're stuck with me now, Coleman," he said, his voice husky. "Bring it on, Harper," I said, grinning through tears. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. We planned a small wedding. Nothing like the extravaganzas Nate's money could buy. I wanted it real, raw, ours. We chose a tiny chapel in Asheville nestled in the mountains with just a handful of people who mattered. Darius, Clara, and my best friend Talia, a blues singer from Memphis who'd been my rock when I was scraping by. The chapel was simple, all wood beams and stained glass, the air thick with the scent of pine and promise. I wore a white dress, sleeveless and flowing, that made me feel like myself, not some polished version trying to fit Nate's world. Darius walked me down the aisle, his eyes misty as he squeezed my hand. "Daddy'd be proud," he whispered, and I nearly lost it right there. Nate stood at the altar, his suit charcoal gray, his smile so bright it could have lit the room. When he saw me, his breath caught, his eyes shining with a love so raw it took my breath away. "You're beautiful," he said as I reached him, his voice low. "Just for me." "You're not bad yourself," I teased, but my voice shook, overwhelmed by the moment. The ceremony was short. Our vows, simple, but fierce. "I was lost," Nate said, his voice breaking, "until you found me in the rain. You're my shelter. Jada, my home. I promise to love you, fight for you, build with you always." I swallowed hard, my hands in his. "You saw me when I couldn't see myself," I said. "You gave me a reason to hope, to dream. I promised to love you back, to challenge you to be your partner in every storm." We exchanged rings, his a plain gold band, mine the pearl that felt like Memphis, and when the officiant said, "You may kiss," Nate pulled me close, his lips claiming mine in a kiss that was both tender and hungry. The small crowd cheered, Talia's voice rising in a soulful note, and I laughed against his mouth, my heart so full it hurt. The reception was on a nearby hillside under a canopy of twinkling lights and stars. We danced to Talia's blues, my head on Nate's chest, his arms strong around me. "No regrets," he whispered, his lips grazing my ear. "Not one," I said, melting into him. "Every step led me to you." Clara approached later, her eyes misty. "I've never seen him this happy," she said, squeezing my hand. "You're his miracle." "Jada, he's mine too," I said, my voice thick, and she hugged me, her warmth like a mother's. 6 months later, we stood on Beale Street, the heart of Memphis, for the ribbon cutting of the Coleman Harper Community Center. It was our dream made real, a place for the homeless, the struggling, anyone who needed a hand up. We offered dance classes, music lessons, job training, and counseling, all rooted in the belief that everyone deserved a second chance. The building was modest but bright, with murals of guitars and dancers painted by local artists, and a stage where I'd teach hip-hop to kids who reminded me of myself. The crowd was small but vibrant. Darius, Talia, Clara, and a handful of Memphis folks who'd known me at my lowest. I stood beside Nate, my hand in his as he spoke to the press. "This center is personal," he said, his voice steady. "It's about giving back to the city that shaped us, the people who fight every day to rise. Jada's the heart of it. And I'm just lucky to be along for the ride." I elbowed him, laughing. "Don't sell yourself short, Harper. You're pulling your weight." The crowd chuckled, and when we cut the ribbon, the cheers felt like home. Later, as the party spilled into the center's courtyard, I pulled Nate onto the dance floor. Talia's band playing a slow, soulful tune. His hands settled on my hips, our bodies swaying, and I felt the weight of our journey. Every fight, every kiss, every leap of faith settled into something solid, eternal. "Thank you," he whispered, his lips brushing my temple, "for showing me what matters, for choosing me." I tilted my head, kissing him softly. "Thank you for seeing me, for being my future, our future." He corrected, his eyes shining, and I nodded, my heart full. That night, back in our Memphis loft, a cozy space we'd bought near Beale Street, far from the cold luxury of Chicago, we celebrated in private. The loft was all exposed, brick and warm lights, with a balcony overlooking the Mississippi. I stood there wrapped in Nate's flannel, the river glittering below, when he came up behind me, his arms circling my waist. "Happy?" he asked, his chin resting on my shoulder. "More than I ever thought I could be," I said, turning in his arms. His eyes were dark, filled with a love that still took my breath away. He kissed me slow and deep, his hands sliding under the flannel, finding the bare skin of my back. I shivered, pressing closer, my fingers tracing the lines of his chest through his shirt. The kiss grew urgent, hungry, and we stumbled inside, lips locked, bodies pressed tight. He lifted me onto the counter, his hands roaming, one slipping to my thigh, the other cupping my face. I arched into him, my nails grazing his neck, and he groaned low and raw, his lips trailing to my collarbone, leaving a path of heat. "Jada," he murmured against my skin, his voice thick with want. "You're everything." I pulled him closer, my legs wrapping around his waist, feeling the strength of him, the way we fit. "You're my home," I whispered, my voice breaking, and he kissed me again, fierce and tender, like he was claiming every piece of me. We moved to the bed, the city lights spilling through the window, and made love with a passion that felt like a vow, slow, deliberate, our bodies speaking what words couldn't. His hands explored every curve, his lips worshipping every inch, and I gave myself to him, heart and soul, knowing this was forever. Afterward, we lay tangled in the sheets, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder, the river humming outside. "I love you," he said, his voice soft but sure. "I love you too." I said, my head on his chest, his heartbeat, my anchor. From a rain-soaked awning to a rooftop in Miami, from park benches to a dance floor under the stars, my life had changed in ways I never could have dreamed. I'd lost everything once, but in losing, I'd found Nate Darius myself. The Coleman Harper Center was just the start. We'd keep building, keep fighting, keep loving, because that's what we did. Together, we were unstoppable. And as I stood on that balcony, Nate's arms around me, the lights of Beale Street glowing like a promise, I knew 3 words had changed everything. Not. She's my home, though. Those were the ones that shook the world. The real ones. The ones we whispered every night were simpler, truer. I love you. If Jada and Nate's journey from the streets of Memphis to a love that conquered all made your heart sing, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell to catch more stories that'll lift you up and keep you believing in second chances. Drop a comment below. What moment in your life showed you love could change everything? Let's keep the vibe alive.